right, we're going to move into a fireside chat next on the topic how to build a scalable food brand without losing your soul. Featuring the founders of Naar and Paris Panini, this candid conversation dives into the real journey of building food brands that scale without compromising on identity, authenticity, or values. From preserving culinary integrity to navigating growth pressures, discover what it takes to stay rooted while going big in India's evolving F&B market. I'd like to invite our panelists onto the stage. Please give them a big round of applause. Starting with Akshay Tripathi, co-founder and partner at Naar. Nikhil Gupta, co-founder Popo Ventures. And moderating this fireside chat is Priya Chetty-Rajagopal, managing director and founder at Multiversal Advisory. Please give them a big round of applause. And with that, it's over to you, Priya.
Hear me okay? I'm taking the liberty of using this podium because with my hand, if I keep moving left and right, you're going to be spiraling more than anything else. I want to say thank you so much to both of you for making it because it was, just to remind you, Akshay actually walked halfway to the hotel to get here. So I know he has his hotel way up in the hills, but I think this kind of adventure is quite remarkable. So welcome both of you. Welcome Akshay and Nikhil. Our discussion is interesting because we talk about scalable food, building a scalable food brand without losing your soul. And one of the things that sort of stuck with me when we were chatting a couple of days ago was, is it an either or? Is scale and soul two ends of the spectrum or something which is a continuum more than anything else? So I wanted to start off, if I may, Akshay and Nikhil. I'm going to resonate with the fact that, I do believe this is a part of the continuum more than anything else. But let's think about what soul means to both of you. You have very different organizations, brands, and focus areas. So what does, let's start with you, if I may. What does soul mean to you?
Well, we're getting from numbers to deep end of psychology here. So I think it's a good segue into the subject that we'll be discussing. I guess very quickly, firstly, I'm from food and beverage background, which means that you're either a chef or you're running restaurants, right? So the first thing that you kind of taught when you enter this so-called word of industry is told that, hey, if you do not have the passion, you cannot survive. Yeah. And again, passion is equivalent to long hours and all the terrible stuff which happened in 80s and 90s and the early 2000s of kind of exploiting people working in this industry, right? So that was the connotation of passion. And obviously you can't have passion if you do not have a bare soul. Yeah, but jokes apart, trust me, when you're in the service of hospitality, you do not have to get paid for it, and that comes from within. So until unless, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, and you do not have that sense of service within your friends, family, peers, you will never be able to accomplish anything in this particular line of work, right? So I guess, having said that, there is absolutely nobody who starts this business who does not have soul. Because I can tell you just from the statistics that this is one of the most excruciating line of work. It's 10% margins for 90% effort. Yeah, we had the series of investors who was sitting on the stage before this. That's not the numbers that any business person wants to invest in. So if you still invest in this, and if you still pursue your career in this, then automatically there is a lot of soul searching while entering and through the career.
Thank you, Akshay. So, you look at the kind of business that you're in, and I am very cognizant of the fact that you come from the hotel industry. You've come from, interestingly and contradictorily, you've come from scale with, being in the Indian Hotels Corporation and spent so much of time building up. And now you've chosen to go away into the mountains and almost do exactly the opposite, though there's nothing which is opposite, but it's interesting. And yours is almost like a reflection of these mountains being your soul. And coming to Nikhil, the first bite that takes you home which is all your wonderful organizations. And you, in contrast, you've come from a corporate background. You've worked with different kinds of companies, and then you have made your foray into the food business. So I think whoever set up the panel, I think, has made an interesting set of panelists. I appreciate the different thoughts that you bring in. But over to you, Nikhil. What do you think? The first bite that takes you home, is that soul for you?
So the thing for me is, unlike Akshay, I'm not from F&B. I've always been passionate about food. I grew up in my dad was into travel. So my brother and I sort of grew up traveling, enjoying food. And mom was also a great cook at home. So food was something we sort of grew up around. Back of our heads, we always wanted to get into F&B. But we saw a bunch of our friends starting it, and most of them failed. It was more of passion projects after starting. It was a side hustle. None of them lasted beyond a year or so. So we were a little wary about it. Then came a time that my brother and I were actively looking for something to do. So how it all started is we were in Delhi in Feb 2017. And we were at that point, we were 6 months into looking at various businesses. Food was like the absolute last option, right? We were looking at doing something in accounting, in tech, all very traditional businesses. So in Feb, I was in Delhi for a friend's wedding. We were just tired one day, and we sort of were at the friend's house. So she said, you know what, I'm going to order pizza over. So we said, great, we're tired of going out. And at that point in Bangalore, we were just used to Domino's and the like. It was just the QSRs. So she ordered food from Fat Lulu's. It came in these ultra cool boxes, a lot of soul, a lot of passion in the product. Even before you opened it, you could tell it's something different. So my brother and I go, wow, this is amazing. In Bangalore, we have nothing like this. So those were the days of Facebook. So what we did is I looked up Deepak, the owner, had a common friend. Next day, met him for lunch in Delhi. And I was like, Deepak, at any cost, I want to take a franchise. I don't know anything about F&B. I can't cook, and I'm vegetarian. So I have no idea. But we want to take a franchise. So that's how it started. A few weeks later, Deepak came to Bangalore, and we were really excited at that point, and we sort of identified a property as well, which is where Pizza Bakery is today.
Yeah.
So Deepak came, and then he was like, guys, I admire your passion, but we're not really ready, because they were also relatively new, and they had never even been to the South before. But we were really excited. We're like, you know what, we've found something, the next big thing, let's go ahead. So some sort of blind faith in ourselves, we started, and that's where it all began. So coming back to your question, I think you do definitely need a lot of passion, especially in the early days, because we had it tough, really tough, because we had no background, no training, no contacts, and we're just figuring things out. The only thing that sort of keeps you going is the passion.
2017 to now.
Yes.
Huh? That's something. That's passion and soul that's taken you somewhere. And this whole structure and the theory of soul versus scale, again, I'm just picking those words because I just like the whole idea of, I think it sounds good. The trade-offs that we have, which is the fact that while your brands are parallel case studies, essentially what you're doing is you're scaling differently, but soulfully. You are two really different stories. Now, I want to ask you about, the very first question we started, and you've already covered it, but I just thought if you have anything more to add about what your motivation and inspiration was. Akshay, Naar, the restaurant, if I can just call it a restaurant, sits in the Himalayas. It blends local ingredients with global techniques. What was your inspiration about defining, mountain dining? That is something that has happened. And the balance that you have literally between elevation, metaphorically and literally, and accessibility. So I will leave that question with you, and at the same time, I'll just put my question across to Nikhil on motivation and inspiration. I'd like you both to think through this. Your brand turned paninis into a vehicle for Indian nostalgia. That was a strange thing to do. We know about fusion, but it was an interesting thing. Was the goal in your time to kind of disrupt the space and fast casual with familiarity, that kind of thing? And maa ka haath, at scale, how does that work? So these are my questions to you about motivation and inspiration. Akshay, would you like to go first?
Yeah, it's always interesting when you have to summarize 25 years of your life in 2 minutes.
Good luck with that.
But I'll kind of attempt. So, as I mentioned that I started my career in food and beverage, so conventionally, this is early 2000s. Majority of parents wants you to be conventional line of careers. So that's doctors, lawyers, that's how it was. getting to cook or being a server, and I come from Lucknow and Delhi. In our places, it used to be known as that, hey, how would you become a bera or how would you become a bawarchi, right? So between a bawarchi versus bera, these were always looked upon as blue-collar jobs. So while you enter, of course, it's a very different point of view when you start looking from hotels and restaurants when you start working in them. So the aspiration always is that, hey, usually for hotels, it's I will become a general manager, right? That's what you're taught to be. But I was fortunate enough to start and enter into the world of restaurants. I started opening since 2007. And while I started opening restaurants, I realized this is literally the most ambitious projects that you can take to, because you reinvent yourself by every opening. And Nikhil would agree, because obviously he scales up much faster than what we usually do in fine dining restaurants and hotels. One of the key things was that you always have aspirations to be a certain person, right? In my case, it was always chefs. Unfortunately, I had no patience to cook, so I decided very early that I cannot become a cook, right? I can't become a chef. So you always had to partner with some of the best. So all my life, I kind of scouted for cooks and chefs around the world who could partner with, and then that's the ones that lead the way. Right? In fact, one of the key ones that I did not scout, but a great friend, Naren, is sitting right in front of me, and we worked in my previous avatar very, very closely. But likewise, I found a chef who's also considered as my first wife, my best friend, called Pratik Sadhu, right? So, and we were always together for 15 years, did multiple projects between different geographies of the world, and our ambition was actually we were sitting at the cafeteria of a pier. It's a hotel by the Taj in New York City. This is the year 2014. That's the year that we had kind of thought through. In fact, the partner in crime that time is also just walked in through the door right now. Sirisha, who's also again somebody who was, she's part of the panel which is next. But Sirisha, I'm telling the story about how kind of this happened. So she was the third poke in the wheel when we were kind of discussing this in New York, saying that, hey, let's open a restaurant. So this was a conversation way back in 13, 14, and obviously as people growing up in the industry, you do not have ever enough money. What is always there is a lot of money outside, right? Because there is so much of interest for people opening restaurants that you will get the money from them. And that's where you burn the hand, that the money does not come cheap. Because the one thing that I've seen in the last few years, it's improving, is that the people from the industry have very limited knowledge about the business.
And also longevity,
Absolutely.
The long-term view is, yeah.
So ultimately what really happens is that you're selling, you have no skin in the business, you have absolutely no equity, and that's why you are just a salaried employee, while you are the key cornerstone of creating brands, right? So when you start doing that, that's the realization which comes in now. You would see a lot of the young chefs migrating into business founders and owners, and that's how eventually, after doing this, we landed up in the middle of the hills, at the foothills of Himalaya, kind of got drunk and decided that, hey...
Always good to know why it started.
All the wild decisions are taken then. And then kind of decided that, hey, let's kind of do this. Let's see where this goes. We brewed the idea for about a year or so. But fortunately for us, everything fell in place. The biggest, greatest thing, and that's what you can see with this full room, is that there's a lot of interest in food and beverage and restaurants right now. Right? This is not like exactly how it was 10 or 15 years back. People used to boast about experiences in different cities around the country and the world. These days, those conversations are about what the meals that you've had. And that obviously benefits for all the entrepreneurs trying to do business and riding that wave. And that wave, I think, is going to continue for next 10 to 12 years. We'll not get in terms of the demographic politics of it, purely because we are also a young population. And automatically, post-COVID, we've seen a huge realization of conversion, the dollars into experiences. So that was the reason of literally getting into this job and doing what we are doing right now.
Getting a couple of drinks is always, it's a good motivation. I think it's a good thing for us to know if we want to start a new business. Get a little creative, whatever takes you there. Location as a hero is what's with you. I mean, that's been something which has been talked about so much. Look at comfort food reimagined for you. What is your, you've actually already covered, the reason why you jumped into this, but in terms of where the space is now and what keeps you excited and going, what's that about, Nikhil?
So I think for us, right, there was a lot of learning in the early days. So there was one sort of instance that happened in the first month. So our older customers who sort of visited us in the first year, it's very likely that I've served them, cleaned their table, or taken their order. My brother and I were very hands-on. My wife was also there. My parents were there. We were sort of quite understaffed because we didn't know where to hire staff.
Yeah.
So the whole family was just pitching in terms of helping, right? So there was this one instance in the first few months where we were running completely full. And there was a staircase leading to the upper floor where we'd not yet opened because we'd under-ordered furniture to keep costs down. So, and what happened was we were running full and customers were like, you know what, we don't mind sitting on the stairs and just serve us the food. And we realized at that point that, we're doing something right. People don't mind sitting on the staircase, paying full price and enjoying their meal. And that sort of gave us the confidence that, we're in the right path. And it's moments like that where you sort of walk into a room, you get introduced as the founder of Pizza Bakery, Paris Panini or whatever, and everybody just tells you how much they love your food. And that sort of keeps you going, it keeps you motivated, because it's a hard business. It's a day in, day out hard business. You might do 99 things right, but the one thing that goes wrong, and there are always things that go wrong, we get emails about it, we get everything about it.
Yes.
So you got to really love what you do. You also got to, that feedback that you get from customers also really keeps you going.
Yeah. And keeps you honest, keeps you wanting to do more.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And here you're talking about the food being a hero, but also the fact that unless there's feedback and something that catches at your soul, you really can't go back the next day and say, what am I doing? What am I doing this for? If the customer sat on the staircase and enjoyed their food, I can completely understand how it made you feel. So I'm jumping to a very different question, which is, we have a wonderful set of people here from either interested in this food business or from the space. I just wanted to understand, what would you think would be their best takeaway from both your stories? And is there anything that you would like to hear from them? But first, what is it that you would like them, our audience, to take away from your stories? If there was one thing that you wanted them to take away from you.
So our company ethos has always been very product focused, right? In food, there are, or when running a restaurant, there are at least 100 things I can name top of my head that can go wrong. But if your food is good, that's what will keep you going. That's what will keep your customers coming back. So for us, it's not been about the ambience, the service, or anything else. It's always about the food and the product. So we continue to spend a lot of time on serving the best that one can give. And we believe that sort of makes up for everything else. Because what I've seen, even as a customer that goes out, right, if the service is bad somewhere, not that it's okay, you will forgive them, but you'll still go back. But if the food is bad, you'll never go back, however good everything else is.
True. What about you, Akshay?
Actually, from that, I have a counterpoint. And also because we are in two different spaces, I've always followed that if you have good food or above average food and bad service, you will never go back, right? But if you have great food and bad service, you're never coming back there as well, right? Yeah. So the point always is that this is a people's business, so much so that whatever sector you may be in, you may have a kiosk to a fine dining restaurant in the middle of nowhere, but ultimately, this is a lowest common denominator business. So if I have to tell you that what is one thing which is most critical in this case is that you can build for product. It can be greatest brick and mortar game. It can be the greatest tech. It can be the greatest processes. It can be the greatest food. But ultimately, the touch point is always there going to be an intervention of a person doing this business, right? So obviously we're not talking about decimal 10 places of robotic cafes serving you food, but it is a people's game. And in this case, the owner usually is not in the commanding position. The greatest autonomy is in the lowest common denominator's hand, because it's that server, it's that dishwasher, it's that lowest person in the hierarchy who's actually handling the most expensive stuff in your places. So invest in people, give them autonomy, because nobody likes to be told, and you can look in your own houses and see how your kids react when you tell them what to do. But unfortunately, in hotels and restaurants, we have a habit of telling too much, right? So just do the opposite.
Two different points of view, and thank
Just
you, Nikhil. You
to
wanted
echo
comment.
what he was saying, I was at Naar in January this year.
I believe you made that
phenomenal
trip.
service. Like, we were just blown away. So clearly, I mean, they're doing a brilliant job.
You actually took that trip specially to eat there.
Just to eat at Naar. Had no other agenda. Never been to Chandigarh in my life. Went to Naar and came back. That's it.
You know, this is very interesting because it can segue in terms of, because there are a lot of food entrepreneurs. And Nikhil is not from the industry, but he's adapted towards the best form of systems and food across Bangalore. We are from the industry, 20 plus years. But we did not anticipate that India was ready to actually make the trip to a destination which takes like 2.5 hours from the airport, plus you get there and all of that. So minimum 5 to 7 hours of travel. Sure. But that's the customer right now.
And that's
that
the
they're
new
happy.
reality.
That's a new reality that you'll be surprised. Do not go by preconceived notions when it comes to the food and beverage business, because everything which was done in the past is absolutely not applicable at this time, right? So except for hospitality, which will never go out of fashion, everything else will surprise you the way people actually take to the demand, right? Whether it's sitting on the stairs and eating the food, or whether it's taking a trip and going across, if the product market fit is correct.
And we're getting back to experiences. So, you know, if you look at yours as hyperlocal sourcing, you have, you know, and you've proven clearly that remote destinations can be culinary hubs. And with you, Nikhil, you've seen soul also in bold flavors, the fact that you've chosen the, you know, the simplicity can still be borne out by good, iconic branding. At some point, I may come back to say that, you know, what is your one sentence mantra for scaling soulfully, but we'll come back to that. Think about it, maybe at the end of the discussion. Let's talk about what's happened on the tech demographic and the explosive growth in this country. You know, there has been a huge intervention in terms of how it's affected your business. Yes, we've talked about experiences. The F&B industry, particularly food, is so sexy right now. It's so cool, and it's very in to say, you know, I have an interest in the you know, in this restaurant or whatever. But I have to quickly tell you that one of my very dear friends, whose father comes in from the north once in a while, and I was talking to him and I said, how are things going? And we were talking about this and that, and he said, "Pata nahi, मेरा लड़का अभी भी वो cooking ही कर रहा है. मैं सोच रहा था कि he will do something, but cooking ही कर रहा है." This guy runs one of the most brilliant restaurants in the city. But there it was. And I'm saying, we've moved on from there, so dads have a different point of view. I think this generation thinks differently. Now, if you look at, you know, I mean, I'd love for you to share your experiences on that, but look at Naar. Your location limits walk-ins, right? You have destination diners. Obviously, Swiggy, Zomato is not your partner in growth. So I want to figure out how did it change the game? And you don't have to talk about just Naar, it could be from before. Nikhil, for you, you exploded in food courts, in airports, especially post-COVID. How did tech help you standardize operations without turning, you know, paninis into an assembly line product? The whole role of technology and scale in this, particularly within the fact that we are in a demographically very rich space. Technology is growing. We are growing in general, and we are open to eating out. Your thoughts on this, Nikhil? Maybe you'd like to go first.
Sure. So when you talk about tech, you're talking about tech externally, your Swiggy, Zomato, etc., right? Or the
yes.
ones internally within the company?
At this point, internally, but please bring this in because
Okay,
I think
so I'll just cover both aspects. So I think tech plays a massive role as you scale. We today operate between our three brands, Pizza Bakery, Paris Panini, and Smash Guys. We have about 31 locations in Bangalore. So in terms of keeping standardization, quality, and just making sure that it's done the right way, we have to use a lot of tech. Because we can't be in that many places at a time. It's not possible. And with food, or with F&B, there's so many variables today, right? And every day is day one. You got to get it right every single day. There's no
Every day
excuse.
is a new day.
Yeah, because
Literally, yeah.
people are coming there to celebrate their birthdays, anniversaries, or just have a good time. And they are there to have a good time, and you cannot disappoint. They've come in all the way, right? So we use a large amount of tech to sort of monitor our teams, guide them, train them, etc. I mean, that's a whole new topic, but that's a very deep space that we have gotten into. I'm very passionate about tech. If it wasn't for food, it's very likely I'd be in tech. So it's a passion as well for me.
Yeah, good. So that's
Coming to the other side in terms of our growth partners, which is Swiggy Zomato, the turning point was COVID. Till COVID, Swiggy Zomato was there. I mean, we never took them seriously. It was not a focus. It was all about having people come into your restaurant, experience it the right way. COVID came, and then we realized, you know what, there's no dine-in anymore. We still had a couple of hundred staff to pay salaries for, and we said, you know, what are we going to do? And that's when the power of delivery unlocked.
unbelievable.
And ever since, there's been no looking back. I mean, I would say we're fortunately or unfortunately, we're almost a delivery-first company now. I would still prefer dine-in because that gives you the whole experience.
And plus you get, you meet the customer. There's that
Exactly,
whole
you get
thing,
feedback. You're able to sort of connect with them.
Yeah,
Delivery, you do lose a large amount of it. But the thing with delivery is it's convenience, right? People don't mind getting 10% or 15% lesser quality food because it's cold, it's traveled, etc. But for the convenience of not sitting in this traffic, it's huge.
Ask Akshay.
Yes.
The traffic. And your thoughts, Akshay?
Yeah, so I'm going to use two anecdotes. One from my existing, in fact, Zomato is our growth partner. Not obviously we can't deliver, but definitely in terms of table management system, right? So automatically when you want to get into tech, there is a conventional market, which is word of mouth and the ones that who knows you. And the other is the footfall that you're going to get out of the platforms. So and also what it does for small businesses is that you do not have to hire for reservations. You do not have to employ the softwares. All you're doing is, because Zomato is also, again, the business model for all these platforms is the higher ticket size. Basis the ticket sizes, that's how they are getting the investors in, and that's what kind of goes out to the market. On the second front of, we had opportunity with the IHCL and Taj. I was part of a group which launched an app, which was a food delivery app during COVID. And there were great learnings from both the Zomato and Swiggy that we realized that ultimately, as Nikhil mentioned, post-COVID, the transition into adaption of technology increased for multiple demographics. So you would have realized that your mothers and fathers are also ordering eggs and bread through the app, right? Which was never the case because they were just used to the conventional modes and means. The second bit is that as humans, we have a habit of owning things, right? So you cannot own a house and a clothes and a car on a daily basis. But what you literally can own, everybody talks about convenience, of course there is, but if you actually go to Bombay, this kind of mechanism of delivery has always existed for more than 4 or 5 decades. So you will call up and the guy will deliver to you within like 5 minutes, right? So it's only in certain cities that convenience just came in.
No, it's got institutionalized.
Exactly.
That is something which is very big.
But the greatest thing is about the ownership. So that's what the quick service delivery is, the food, whether it's your chai, whether it's your safety pin, or whether it's your wine opener, everything can be delivered to you within 5 minutes. So literally, the reason the entire market is shifted on to your 6 inches in your hands is to divert every single UI, UX to make you spend more. So automatically, it helps a lot of businesses, a lot of small businesses, because it's not a free marketplace, but now, in fact, there is a free marketplace by the government also, wherein you can order the same food without paying any kind of commission. So automatically it opens out multiple markets, you have larger orders. Lastly, I also want to focus on that now, specifically scalable brands like Nikhil's, you build the business model separately for dine-in and dine-out business, right? So it's not the similar typical business projections that you do for the restaurant dine-in business, because automatically the modus operandi is completely different, the cost structures are completely different.
Thank you both. I have 2 more questions, and I'm very aware that we are really running short of time. So I wanted to ask you, what is your way of defining success? And I'm looking at one non-financial KPI also that you would look at defining success. You run two different businesses. What do you think? How is success to you?
So I think we'll have two very different answers. Ours is a very mine's a very boring answer. I mean, for me, I know you said non-financial, but for me, profitability is the number one metric,
yeah.
because this is a hard business.
Yes.
You have massive
You have to
bills
pay salaries at the end of the month. You pay
Yes.
vendors. Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. You have massive responsibilities in terms of the people you hire, the vendors you work with, and even one bad month can really mess it all up. So it's important to sort of have a strong, healthy profitability and a bottom line, because revenues, it's a great vanity metric, but profitability is your complete sanity, right? So we're very profit focused. So before we venture into anything, we make sure that it's likely that we'll end up in the green, otherwise we won't venture into it. So we're a bit conservative in that sense. So on the other side, I mean, that's obviously to keep things going, but how we sort of figure out whether we're in the right path, whether we're doing the right thing, is because we're quite active in delivery and even in the dine-in space. We get a lot of feedback from our customers. We sort of measure this. So we have clear number ratings of how it is, what products are liked, what are people thinking, and what's going well. So we sort of make sure that there are a lot more happy customers than unhappy ones. And the unhappy ones, we take it very seriously. As a management team, we go through every single negative feedback and we take action on it. And if we see that reducing month on month, we're doing something right.
Okay, so that's a combined thing, both the metrics of financial success and what your customers think. What about you?
I would tend to agree with Nikhil. Even though we are into fine dining business, profits is the first. And I'll literally give you the example. If you do not have the buffer and cushion, as we all know, the geopolitical situation in the country, in a couple of weeks back, we had all the flights to Chandigarh completely stopped, right? So there was a point of time that people are planning their visits across to a restaurant. Suddenly we have 300 odd reservations getting cancelled. Now, as an entrepreneur, and that's the case with every entrepreneur, is you start thinking about, will I be able to make costs without taking a debt, right? And that's the reason the financial stability is the most important thing that has to be talked about. Unlike in the fine dining space internationally, you always have them burning the cash, and there are different ventures which are generating the cash. So there is some sort of a equilibrium there. But more importantly, as a restaurateur, I usually put it as a life cycle of the journey, right? The euphoria of creation. That's one of the most important thing, right? When you're creating something, then it comes from the part that you're being accepted. That's a success parameter. The third is going to be the acknowledgement. You want that acknowledgement coming in from peers. You want that acknowledgement coming from your guests. You want your acknowledgement coming in from the business book. And fourth and most important thing is just making sure that you are distributing that success amongst everybody else, and not only passing it on to the guest, but it is more importantly the team who's doing it.
That's really such an important point, because one forgets how many hands it takes a village, literally, and by keeping people motivated, it's critical. I had two more questions, but I'm going to stop. But one of the questions which I hope that you will take from the audience at lunch is your own anecdotes and your own special experiences, because I think there are so many. One of that stuck with me is somebody who wrote a complaint to you saying your food tasted too much like home. He wanted his money back, and I found that so cute and so funny. But yeah, so you can succeed too much. Sometimes saying, "Nahi, ghar ka khana hai, hum kyun order kar rahe hain?" But I think it's a great compliment. We've talked about defining success. I also wanted to quickly talk about just two things before we want to keep it short. One is the impact of social media. There's no question about the fact that this is so intertwined in the success of your business. So I want you to just give a two-line on that. And the second thing which I want to move on to afterwards is the importance of community. Both of you do different things. I personally, for example, I run something called Heritage Beko, and we love the fact that people are going back to old buildings, to set up restaurants or eating house, there. So you are encouraging something. We also do a lot of work with animal welfare. So we are finding now restaurants now being part of the food chain in terms of giving back to the local community. So being part of the community is something very important, and more people realize that it's very valuable to be part of the community. So, and let me tell you a little later the story of Tony and Cedar Slice, but that's another one. About social media, about, your thoughts on this, because this is such an important part of your lives.
So I think social media, especially post-COVID, has become extremely critical. I mean, it's almost like a directory of where you want to eat. So
What happens if you stop? Today there's no social media. What happens to both your businesses?
I think the form of discovery will change. That's it. Earlier, I think, like, if I take my own example, my wife and I used to look at Zomato to see what are the new restaurants that have opened, where do we go, and that was the only way to discover. But now I don't see that happening much. It's all about social media, who shared which story, or you saw which post of what restaurant is open newly. So you sort of plan your weekends, you plan your next few weeks mentally in terms of where you want to go, based on what you see. So social media plays a big role. That's one thing in terms of discovery, but it also helps you define and build your brand's character, what you sort of are, and what sort of experience one can come from.
True. Yours is far more esoteric, trying to define that. What's
Yeah, I'll quickly summarize both the points. One is that it's actually not a social media anymore. It's actually a social market, right? First, it's a marketplace. Second, the more important need of social currency. So that's what you get fed off. You are known by the experiences and the number of followers, and automatically that's the economy that we are living in. It's not going away, so much so that we may hate it, but that's where to live. So literally speaking, it's not even all the platforms. Just single Instagram is the reason for distribution for majority of small businesses, and not only restaurants. On part of the community, we are in middle of village, so it literally takes a village to, whether it's the local ladies coming and cooking us staff meals, or whether it is the 14 mountain dogs that we have. All of that, we are in their space. We have leased out the space from them, literally as well as financially. So automatically for us, that's the cornerstone of doing business.
And you can imagine the story of the mountain dogs, of course, tugged with me. We're going to end now because we're very close. We're lunch, but please feel free to talk to our panelists over lunch. And I want to say thank you very much for listening, and sorry for extending time. We were all beyond time. But I think to summarize, and with both your permission, what I would say is that while we're talking about scaling with soul, what we really are, I think we've clearly understood is that while your brands are looked at and almost like parallel streams, two very different, but essentially you are scaling differently, but with soul. And I hope there's going to be a lot more interest around these different kinds of structures, that there's place for everyone in this world. So let's hear a round of applause. I'm sorry, no time for questions, but a round of applause for our wonderful panelists who've done such a great sharing. So thank you for being patient, everyone.
I'd like to request you please stay back on stage. I'd like to invite Shrisha Chandana, Vice President of Learning and Development and Sustainability, the India Hotels Company Limited, to present our panelists with a small token of our appreciation. I'd like to take this opportunity once again to thank Akshay, Nikhil and Priya for that very insightful fireside chat on staying rooted while going big in India's evolving F&B market. Please give them a big round of applause once again. We'd like to thank them for that very interesting panel discussion.